Advanced Jamf Setup, getting the most out of shared devices. Before we begin, please take a moment to review this disclaimer. Thank you for joining us to hear more about shared iOS device deployments and how Jamf Setup will elevate your shared deployment strategies. For those not familiar, Jamf Setup is an independent application that, when coupled with Jamf Pro, allows for a customized experience on iOS devices. Think wallpaper, applications, and restrictions, if desired, all without IT involvement. We're going to be covering some common hurdles with shared device deployments, some unique workflows for iOS, discussing some Jamf Pro configuration tips for the admin community, and then cap it off by showing a brief demo of how Jamf Pro and Jamf Setup improves that end user experience. During this session, you'll be hearing from a number of Jamfs. I am Rick Lucero, Business Development Executive for the retail industry at Jamf, which means I'm responsible for building and cultivating strategic relationships with our go-to-market partners, as well as supporting my fellow Jamfs when industry-specific knowledge is needed. And most importantly, I get to collaborate directly with retailers to ensure that their end user experience is top of mind and their corporate initiatives are successful. You'll also hear from Tim Knox. This is Tim's 8th JNUC, but his very first virtual JNUC. Ask him and he'll tell you that he has the coolest job at Jamf. Tim is the Business Development Systems Engineer. So Tim works with customers, potential future happy customers, and partners to develop industry solutions and custom workflows in healthcare, retail, and hospitality. Next, you will be hearing from Christopher Ball. Chris is a Jamf implementation engineer who collaborates closely with customers to develop automations and integrations to work more efficiently. He works alongside a team of implementation engineers who help put the "and" in Jamf and. He will be discussing a couple specific customer requests and how Jamf solved them. Lastly, I will walk us through what all the magic looks like for our end users and how mobile devices from Apple that are managed by Jamf Pro and utilizing Jamf Setup provide a unique experience for your team. So how common are shared device deployments today? Way more common than you might think, especially for the mobile workforce. Deskless roles represent around 80% of the global workforce, meaning nearly 2.7 billion individuals spend their day on the go, which is why iOS devices are as popular as ever in the enterprise world, and there are no signs of that trend slowing down. The reason is humans want the same technology in all aspects of life. From an iPhone at home to an iPad at work, that transition is simple. The challenge is that these devices were not originally intended to be shared. They were intended to be personal, which makes enterprise deployments a bit less straightforward. We're talking about a high-paced, highly mobile environment. The deskless workforce needs to be agile, as intended. These individuals spend a large majority of their day being flexible to the needs of the business. Their technology is task-driven and oftentimes used by many people during the normal course of a workday. Typically, these individuals are not tied to their corporate email inbox. Some likely don't even have a corporate email, or if they do, it's not a part of their day-to-day workflow. And just like the end user, their technology needs to be agile, seamlessly shifting from an operational task to guest-facing at a moment's notice. Now, there's one more variable to discuss, and it's a big one. What does it take to customize the experience from an IT perspective? What expectations or requirements does it place on the end user? In short, can you empower your deskless workforce without increasing workload on IT? With Jamf Setup, we know you can. So let me hand it over to Tim Knox to share more.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Rick. A few years ago, I was in Minneapolis, and I was able to do one of the very first sessions around the dyad of apps we call Jamf Setup and Jamf Reset. I'd like to take a little bit of time right at the top to level set the intention of the apps so that we can talk about where it's taken us in the last few years. Jamf Reset's the easy one, so I'll start there. It's a big red button. It wipes the device from the device, and that's pretty much it. Hit the button on the app, and the iPad in your hands will erase itself. Really useful as a troubleshooting step if you want to just nuke it and start over, but also could be used to clear every bit of information on a device between shifts or between users. Setup is used to give the user the ability to make a selection from a radial to change the way the device looks and behaves. It works for both iPhones and iPads, and it is not a replacement for shared iPads as it doesn't use any sort of authentication between role selection. The idea, in a nutshell, is that if you could pick up a device from a stack of devices and configure it for your specific need on the fly, that would be pretty awesome. So let's look at what it looks like today, and then I'll talk a little bit about what we've done to improve the experience since that original session 2 years ago. I won't spend a lot of time here discussing the basics, but I'll talk about the concepts so we are all on the same page before moving into the new stuff. Now, the general idea is to change the value of an extension attribute on the device and to use smart groups to have that device fall into or out of scope for config profiles and app scope. We've come up with some pretty clever uses of that function to drive unique workflows, but here are some tips to get you started. Use one home screen layout. Cannot stress that enough. The poor iOS device gets terribly confused if you try to tell it to put a single app in 2 places at once. Just assign one home screen layout to the fleet that will be using Setup and let it lie. Sure, that might mean you have 10 apps assigned to the dock, but if you only have 4 apps visible at a time, you accomplish basically the same thing. Brand everything. There's a huge amount of branding keys in the XML in Managed App Config for this app. Changing everything from the color of the background to the error message text helps your staff or guests know it's from you and that they can trust the app. Using very clear naming conventions and good logic around smart groups will make your life a lot better. I do simple things like create a smart group that literally says scope apps here. And the name of the extension attribute I use for setup is called setup choice. Then I can make the criteria for my scope app here smart group be something like setup choice is, and then whatever selection you have from Jamf Setup. It's easy to get lost in your own ideas if you don't start with a really, really clear base. Common tasks are the easiest. This is customization we're talking about with Jamf Setup, not personalization. As the app stands today, as I said, there's no auth on selections you make. So you'll get much greater mileage doing things like only presenting the apps for the role or using Setup as a way to easily provision devices from central IT. And originally, we had to create the XML by hand. But one of our Jamfs, Zach Hollywell, decided that it would be easier if we could just create a script that could automate all of that. And even better, he put it on GitHub. This script creates the extension attribute and smart groups and everything. Really good work that makes Setup even easier to use. There are a few requirements to make this work, like needing it to run from a Jamf managed Mac because it uses Jamf Helper as part of the process. But to be able to make all the customizations from an actual GUI is pretty rad. We have made some changes to auth within Managed App Config that I know some of our more security-minded folks will love. And here are some of the changes that we've made in Jamf Setup 2.0. And this is out today. You can download it from the App Store or just run an update on your existing fleet. You really are only changing 3 keys within the XML. And starting at the top, we've changed the way we populate the location of your Jamf Pro server. Instead of typing it in V1, you can use the $GPS variable, which will just nab the URL from the device that it's currently enrolled in. And below that, you've got the OAuth section. In my build here, I've disabled the old legacy username and password authentication method. In the old days of 2 months ago, we had to create a user account that had limited access to your Jamf Pro server and then pass those creds in the clear. Not awesome, so we fixed it. You can now use OAuth auth code variable, which is built into Jamf Pro. The authorization code is sent to the mobile devices after a successful authentication with Jamf Pro and is subsequently used to obtain an access and refresh token. This value is dynamically supplied by Jamf and dropped into that field. And the reinstall code is stored on devices after a successful authentication and allows devices to extend their authentication session with the Jamf Pro server by exchanging a reinstall code for a new access and reinstall token. And this value is also dynamically supplied by Jamf Pro using the OAuth reinstall code variable. Lastly, not pictured, we have a key that you can use to turn on or off sending crash reports to Jamf. The default is off. And if you're an app developer and you want to use these keys in your own deployment, contact our developer relations team. I don't know what that process is exactly to work with them to get these keys added to yours, but it definitely doesn't hurt to ask. And if there's some way that we can help your app be deployed in a more scalable or a better way using Jamf, we absolutely want to have a conversation with you. So don't hesitate to reach out. In fact, the real thing that I'm most excited to talk about is the stuff that Chris Ball is going to talk about next. In my very first JNUC session was with him. And every time we get to collaborate on something, I know it's going to be amazing. So my whole job as the BizDev SE is to talk to people about our tool set and figure out how we can expand the tools we have or build something totally new to fill in gaps in a particular space. I've been in the healthcare world for a few years, and my role has spread a bit to start to see if we can do the same kind of development in the retail and hospitality space. And we heard a few things in all three of those areas pretty regularly. And that was, hey, Jamf, those teeny tiny lock screen messages in the 0.06 type at the bottom of the lock screen is too small. Can we make that bigger? And I know that sounds like a small thing, pun absolutely intended, but it can be massive. The customer that put us over the top was UCSF Benioff. They wanted to be able to have their nurse's information, location of the device, and a few other bits of information, and have that reflected on the lock screen and on the wallpaper. Now, I want to stress, and you'll hear this from Chris, that this is not a product. Benioff is doing a proof of concept right now to validate the workflow, and Chris will talk about what it took to make that workflow in a moment. They are not using setup to drive the role-based selection, but because this is pulling info from inventory fields, there's no reason why you couldn't have the role displayed on the device after it's been selected. This is totally applicable to those other industries. Imagine coming across a wayward iPad in the laundry room of a hotel that accidentally got picked up when turning a room. What if you could see that room number on the lock screen in giant font? What if you're on a manufacturing floor and can quickly identify not only what the role of the device is in your hand, but the operating system version and the serial number for IT when they call in and ask for support? This has huge implications for nurses to easily get a managed patient's iPad back to their room or to the right floor if it wanders off too far. Okay, that's a lot from me. So I'm going to hand the thing over to the guy who built this workflow, Chris Ball.
Thank you, Tim. I am Chris. I'm an implementation engineer here at Jamf. I live and breathe automation and integrations. So when we introduced Jamf Setup a few years back, I got so excited about the automation possibilities that this opens up not only for Jamf admins, but for the end users themselves. It is huge, and I can't overstate this, it's huge for the end user to be empowered to make these kind of automations just with a few taps on the screen. I'll start by addressing this known challenge, and this is a very common one, the age-old problem that Tim discussed of identifying what device is this. This is not a problem that is unique to a given industry. This is in retail, hospitality, healthcare, education, anywhere where you might have a number of devices that may be locked and you want to identify them from that lock screen. It becomes a challenge. We do have, like Tim mentioned, we have options within Jamf Pro itself that do approach this issue, but they don't fully solve for it. And like Tim said, it's a small thing, this lock screen message. In fact, it's a little too small a lot of the time. And it's also limited in the amount of characters that we can build into this message. Jamf Setup, the app, does help a lot. We can change configurations to make the iPad look differently. We can also apply a wallpaper for the setup choice that does give us a quick visual cue, some general information about the device. We know what setup choice they chose. We still don't know which iPad this is or what user it may belong to. We could also try to solve for this problem by creating an individual wallpaper for every single device that you know exists and every single device that you think might exist in your environment. This is sounding like a lot of work and a lot of photo editing for me. Sounds like a lot of time, and you probably don't want to spend any time doing that because, as we all know, things change. Devices change hands. Devices go out for repairs. Sometimes users themselves may change roles. Information about the device or the user it's associated to might change. So if we were to create wallpapers in advance, we'd be setting ourselves up for some failure. Here's a view where today in Jamf Pro, you could use Jamf Setup to select an option. And in this case, it changed our screen from gray to blue when we selected nursing. And as I said, this is very helpful, but it doesn't fully solve for the problem. So let's talk about how we did solve for it. As Tim mentioned, UCSF Benioff brought this ask to us. We were naming and applying backgrounds to devices upon enrollment. But very quickly, the follow-up question came, how can we apply this with Jamf Setup? And the solution revealed itself in the form of Jamf Setup, webhooks, and Python. So the way that this solution works, you could have a few webhooks that will want set up for enrolling devices, yes, but also for smart group mobile device membership change. This webhook works with Jamf Setup, so when the user selects their setup option, they are joining a specific group, and we are watching that group with a webhook event. When a device joins it, the event is sent off to a webhook receiver. In this case, we use Java. And after the event is received by Java, some script magic begins. I used Python in my solution. And throughout the script, we are gathering information about the device. We're figuring out, based on what they selected and set up, what the appropriate wallpaper template would be. And then we are applying relevant device information onto that wallpaper template before using Jamf Pro's API to send the wallpaper back to the server and ultimately back down to the device itself. This ended up being a not very complicated workflow to work through, as long as we had those three pieces in place: Jamf Setup, webhooks, and Python or other scripting languages. Okay, so here we have a quick video that will walk us through what the workflow looks like from the admin perspective. Here I was testing it. I'm going to make my first selection of nursing. In the top right, we can see the Jamf Pro event was sent to my webhook receiver, and the script is actually already finished processing and sent the wallpaper to the API and ultimately to the device. Notice device identifying information appeared very quickly after making this selection. Now, we could go through Jamf Setup and make different selection options. A lot of these will be pretty similar. We'll see the setup choice name change and the wallpaper template. Say, for instance, a patient setup is selected. We definitely don't want any user information applied to the wallpaper. So when we select patient, the username disappears. We have the room number, which is probably a more useful identifier, appear instead. And when you're done, you can use Jamf Setup to select a blank option, remove all of the apps, and then apply a welcome message that directs the user to open setup and begin again. All right, with that, I'm going to kick it over to Rick, who will talk about the end user experience.
Thank you, Chris, for walking us through the technical portion. And let's discuss one missing piece of the equation before we move to a demo. At Jamf, we believe great tech is elevated by the community that utilizes it. Our community of user guides us to what is needed. Sometimes we can solve challenges natively with solutions like Jamf Setup. Oftentimes, it means we are needed to extend and connect through cross-industry integrations with best-in-class solutions, and many times in unique and exclusive ways. The apps shown here are a few examples of our partners and reflect the efforts that we undertake to overcome known challenges. With Numerics, Carousel Digital Signage, and Big Tin Can, we leverage the power of app config to enable a more consistent, open, and simple way to configure and secure these applications, providing a seamless out-of-the-box experience for the end user Well, your business benefits from a secure, work-ready app with minimal setup required. Another example is our partners at Infinite Peripherals, where we collaborated to create a first-of-its-kind Jamf Pro integration that provides a fully automated, dynamic inventory reporting solution for iOS devices and their associated IPC peripherals. Or working with Cisco WebEx to offer a frictionless integration that allows people to connect in a simple but meaningful manner. And just to point out, our work doesn't stop at software. We're here from start to finish on the entire project. Jamf has relationships with top hardware partners such as iPort, who specialize in solving multiple challenges seamlessly by offering a wireless charging system designed to hold, charge, and protect your fleet of iPads. Remember, our mission is to help organizations succeed with Apple. All right, the end user. We've said it a number of times in this session, but unless you've walked a mile in their shoes, you may not know the full scope of their journey. I personally have spent many years in the retail industry and have felt the pains of those day-to-day demands, the regular battles witnessed of peers fighting over a specific device because they've taken the time and liberty to customize the application specific for their role? Or how about the dedicated device they need to complete their task that's being used by someone else, or it wasn't charged by the last user, or even worse, it's missing completely? And most common, getting a device and endlessly flipping through applications to find the one you need. Sometimes to find out that someone else deleted it, resulting in swapping out that device for another one and assuming someone will take care of it eventually. The shared relationship is unique, to say the least. Okay, let's see how this all comes together for the deskless workforce, but I do need to mention that the Jamf Setup app is completely customizable and brandable for your organization, so logos, roles, colors, etc. Just like in the other presentations, we're going to select Jamf Setup, and you're presented with a radial of lists of roles or use cases. We'll select Sales Associate. After selecting that from the radial, a quick confirmation shows the selection. Predetermined applications are at the ready, and a wallpaper reflects that selection for the end user. We could take this very device and hand it to someone on the inventory team, and using that exact same workflow, you'll see another customized experience. In this instance, an additional app is presented, and the wallpaper gives the quick visual that the device is in its inventory specialist mode. Quick and easy. And finally, one more example, this time in a leadership role. They typically have greater software needs. So once we select Store Manager, you're going to see a curated list of applications at the ready to help them run their business. Wallpaper changes, as we discussed, they're ready to go. It's truly that simple. To recap with Jamf Setup, IT can ship devices directly to the end user's locations and allow your user to select their configuration and go. That's Jamf Setup leveraging advanced capabilities. Thank you for listening, and we would appreciate it if you could take a minute and fill out the short survey using the widget below. Cheers.